Hello and welcome back to another How It Works. This time we are covering a little bit of a thing called gelid cryotheum. This is very dangerous stuff. It's very freezing. It will actually harm you just like lava. It's kind of slow moving, makes snow, all sorts of stuff, mean stuff, but it is very useful too. It is one of, if not the best, coolants for big reactors. And you can see here we got a very large reactor with gelid cryotheum cooling this thing. It's a passive reactor, very useful. And it's also used in a couple of things here. We have all of the high-end augments, all the level 3 augments for thermal expansion. And it is also used for this. It's a very seldom used, I would say, thermal dynamics pipe. It is a cryo-stabilized flux duct. This is very important because it can transfer infinite RF per tick. See right there. And it is very useful for coming out of maybe not one of these, but maybe a turbine. And it can actually pull everything you could ever throw at it straight out into like a EnderIO capacitor bank like we have here that can take 2.1 million RF per tick. So those are very nice things to have. All these little add-ins, but the problem is they all require the cryotheum dust to make, or in the case of the pipe it's actually gelid cryotheum. Now how do we get this stuff? Well, it comes from blizz rods, and blizz rods are kind of hard to get because they come from these blizzes, and as you can see they only like cold weather. We are not in a cold weather biome, and so they disappear immediately. But you have to go to taiga, mega taiga, ice spike biome or such, and they're very rare spawns. They don't spawn very often, and they're very hard to find, very tedious, laborious. However, there is one nice thing. They are automatable. Yes, there is a actual pattern in the game for cryotheum dust. So if we look at the pattern here, it actually requires a snowball, some niter, redstone, and blizz powder to create 2 cryotheum dust, which you can just throw into a magma crucible to create into the gelid cryotheum, or you can just use this directly in the pattern for things like the augments. You can see here it requires 2 each, so it is kind of a pricey upgrade, but you can have all of it that you could ever possibly want. And the only thing you have to provide is power and redstone. Now this machine here will give you everything you possibly need to make your cryotheum dust. It even has some bonus outputs such as the flint and gravel over here. But what we do is we take an input such as redstone from this cache and power from our capacitor bank, and we use a glacial precipitator to create snowballs. That is fed into a fluid transposer, which takes destabilized redstone, combines it with the snowball to create the little blizz dust, the stuff that is required in the powder, the blizz powder, stuff that's required in the recipe to create your cryotheum dust. Now we get the destabilized redstone from a magma crucible feeding in that redstone. And then we combine that with niter here in our little crafter. This is a very nice automated tool here, but in order to get niter, you have to pulverize sandstone, and it gives you a 50% chance on the secondary. And we can actually use one of our high-end level 3 augments to get a 81% secondary chance here. Now how do we get sandstone? Well, we can throw it through a cyclic assembler, and that requires 4 sand to turn into a block of sandstone. And we can get sand by actually throwing cobblestone through a SAG Mill. The reason I pick a SAG Mill is it has a secondary chance of creating gravel. And gravel is useful to throw through a SAG Mill to create flint, which will actually lower our overall power use and increase the speed of these SAG Mills. So it gives us more efficiency. Now we create the cobblestone by creating it here in an igneous extruder. You just put lava on one side, water in the other, and it combines them for cobble. And if we get the upgraded versions, we can actually add extra augments to give us 4 or 8 or 16, additional combinations to give us, like in this case, 16 cobblestone per operation. We can go all the way up to a full 64, but just a level 1 does very well at keeping up with the whole system here. And I only have a double layer capacitor in here because a octatic was going a little too fast to fill up our buffer here. But that's not a big concern because we have kind of flow control built in. But once it has created the niter, it will combine here and create our Cryotheum Dust and just dump it straight out into our cache here. Now we do have a little bit of overflow protection in our Nullifier. If any excess gravel is created, it either goes to the cache or the Nullifier. So if you'd like to see how this is made, we can go ahead and build it now for you. Or you can just try to make it on your own. Here's the back side, so it's not too bad. Just a little bit of the control here. Let's go ahead and make this. Alright, to make this, we go ahead and throw down our power source, and let's go ahead and throw down our source of redstone as well. Now, the first thing we're going to want to do is set up our snowballs. This is kind of a key component so that we can make our blizz powder. To do that, I'm going to use a EnderIO reservoir. This is kind of a substitute for a aqueous accumulator since we don't want to waste 3 spots and a machine and piping to take care of our water source. So we can set up our reservoir, set it to output mode just by right clicking with our wrench here, and this will pull it into our glacial precipitator. We just set it to snowballs here. It's already pulling power from our little capacitor right there. Now we want to take this output and combine it in a fluid transposer. This will take our snowballs, combine it with destabilized redstone, and to do destabilized redstone we want to do a magma crucible and pull redstone from our cache. We can use conduits. I like to use the item conduits from EnderIO, but the first thing we'll want to do is actually shut down all of these inputs on each of these devices so that we don't accidentally pull in objects that we don't want. And we'll actually be taking care of that with our piping system as well by changing the channels of the colors. So let's go ahead and finish closing all of these up. There we go. Now we can put down our pipe. It'll just run along the back here. Now we can set the output of this to, if we right click, it'll go backwards. So we can set it to red, set it to always active for the extract. We don't need it to connect to our capacitor, but that won't really matter. Now we want to pull in from the back, which is blue, and then we can right click on here, choose insert, and we want it on the red channel, and this will bring in all of our redstone into our magma crucible. Now we also need to provide it with power, so we can just throw in our little power conduits here. Now we don't need to connect power to our cache obviously, but this will connect up all of our machines, give them full power here so that they can do what they need. Now this is just going to fill up here in the buffer in the magma crucible, but we want it to actually dump down into our fluid transposer. So if we set orange to down, then our fluid transposer, we put blue for the top, will start to fill up here. Now we also need to put blue on the left side so it can pull in from the glacial precipitator for snowballs. We can set up this to push them to the right. There we go. Now you can see we're making snowballs, and boom, we got blizz powder. We have already just automated the entire process to get these in their SAG milled or pulverized form of blizz powder. So you can actually stop here if you want to manually craft, or we can keep going and build the rest of our machine. Alright, the next part here, we can go ahead and throw a crafter down, and this is going to be used to craft our actual end product, our Cryotheum Dust here. And to do that we need blizz powder, we need snowballs, so let's grab a snowball from here. Now we are going to tap into these snowballs and bring them over. So we need to put one of these down here. Now we want to bring our snowballs from our Glacial Precipitator over to our crafter. So to do that, we have to set up the back IO here to also push out the back. And we want to do that on, once again, the red channel. And we'll pull it in, insert on red. Now this will give us snowballs. As you can see, it's already filling up here. We can be safe about this as well, and we could also put on this input a basic item filter, and we can put our snowballs and such in this list here. So for instance, snowball, we want redstone, and we'll also want Liz powder, so that'll be from here, but that's being pulled in from the side, so we can actually tell it to pull in from this directly, so we don't even need to set up that. But we do want to push from here out the side like that. Now the niter will come in from the top, so we want to pull from there as well. And to get the redstone in, we have that. We just need to add it to the pattern here. Now to get the niter, that comes from a pulverizer that we'll put here. And then we want to start the loop here that makes our niter. So we can put our Igneous extruder right here. Make sure it's set to cobble. And we'll put a lava bucket and a water bucket in it. So 1 and 1. That'll get our cobble being created. Now remember, we want to go ahead and close up all of these ports here so we don't accidentally get the wrong item from the surrounding stuff. And just to increase our chance of getting niter in this yellow slot, you can see I have that going down into our crafter. But to increase the chance of this, we want to actually load it up with our augments. If you'll notice, this is also a resonant pulverizer, which you'll need to get these extra slots here. That'll give us 81% chance. So now we got our cobblestone. We want to actually put a SAG Mill on top here. There we go. And we'll have this pull from underneath. And we'll have it pull from the back side so we can bring in, well, push pull from our back side so we can bring in any cobble that we need as well as flint. We also need to change the config on this so that we only output up. There we go. And we'll push up, so make sure it's orange. That'll put all of our cobble up here into this SAG Mill. Now we also need to put a Cyclic Assembler here. And what this will do is it'll allow us to put a schematic into here and set up our crafting for sand. Now we want to make sure all of these are closed off, just like all of our other machines, so that we can configure the ports specifically how we want. So we will pull in from the right. So this will fill up our bottom here with sand, and we want to push the output down into our pulverizer. Now let's go ahead and get our new machines hooked up with some power so they'll start processing, and you can see how this goes. The cobble creates our sand, which we then need to set up to push to the side here, and then our sand is going to be used in our schematic like so. And we want to hit the check box, and that'll start making our sandstone. Now we set up our pulverizer to pull in from the top. That'll pulverize our sandstone and make us niter, but it also creates sand. which we can then push back into the system. We'll put the red output out the back, and we'll have that connect in here. We'll disconnect, let's set item there. We'll disconnect that, and we'll set this on, let's do the white channel, and we'll feed it up into here. Looks like we need to set the input on the back as well, there. And we'll set this to insert on the white channel, and that will allow the sand to go from the pulverizer back up into our cyclic assembler. You can see the garbage items that got pulled in due to being on the wrong channel. Now this creates not just the sand but also gravel, so we don't want this to pull in that gravel. So we'll actually want to disconnect these two here. There we go. And we'll throw this, and we want to extract always on white, but then we want to put an input filter there and have it filter on sand. So we'll grab some sand, throw it on our filter. There, now we'll only get sand in our cyclic assembler. Now where do we put the gravel? Well, if we put another SAG mill over here, we can throw in some extra piping and have this insert on the white channel, filter it for gravel, and this will actually take our excess gravel and sag it and have a chance at creating flint. And so with flint, we actually can do in and out mode, set to always active, have it on white, and then we can set this one to not just extract but also insert on white, and we can have it insert flint. And this will put not just cobble but flint back into our SAG mill. It'll only get its cobble from the Igneous extruder, and this can pull in our flint as well by putting it in our filter like so. We hook up our SAG mill to our power so it can start doing its thing, and it'll start creating our flint, and this will give us an improvement to our performance here. You can see it's working its magic right there. Now it won't go out and come right back into the same SAG mill, so what we have to do is set up a temporary buffer for it. So I'm going to set up a cache kind of in this available spot over here. We'll load it with our flint so it can have kind of a filter just naturally. And if we open hand right click on it, it'll lock. That way, even when it runs out, it'll stay as flint and will not do anything else. And then we can have it extract on white always, and it can use the same pipe and be on a different channel than these guys and not have to worry about interfering at all. So now any output of gravel from here will actually just create flint and go back over to there. And we can do that by increasing, oh, we need to set this to in and out mode. So insert on white, and we can do the priority of 9. This will make it so all of the flint will come here first and then go back out into the system to these two SAG mills. Let's go ahead and cut that in half, just kind of prime the system here. Now this will give us a bonus output, 125%, so it gives us a better chance to get that gravel. Now we're getting this quite a stockpile of niter here because we haven't added niter to our pattern, but we can just drop that there and you'll see it can start creating our items, but we need to provide it with power as well. So let's do that. There we go. Now we're getting a whole bunch of Cryotheum Dust. These crafters do craft quite nicely. They go really fast, but the Cyclic Assembler actually uses a lot less RF. So it's a little bit better to put these in place in the event you want to save on power. You can see its maximum power is 20 RF per tick. So now we can take all of this Cryotheum that we're getting and just dump it straight into a cache here. We can set the output to push to the side and it'll fill up a cache just like so. And we can lock it. And you can have this empty out into your storage or whatever you want to do. Now, in the event that we get too much flint, like both of these get completely full, this thing may back up with gravel. And so if we put an extra cache here, not of caches, but we want it for gravel, we can actually have any of the excess gravel go straight into a cache. So if you have additional SAG mills in your environment, you can actually have it back up and go into there. Let's go ahead and change that to insert on white. Now we don't need to put an item filter on it because this cache will only accept gravel. And then we can set its priority to like -1. Doesn't really matter. It'll mostly only come from this guy. Now in my other design over here, I actually have a nullifier right up here, and that is because in the event you have too many gravel or excess items like that, you can actually put an item filter on here for, in my case I did gravel, and we don't want to do flint because that'll fill up over here. So just gravel. We can set that to be on the white channel there. And that is our machine in a nutshell. Now there is the benefit of being able to turn this off, and I did that with these conduit from EnderIO. We have our conduit switch that you can use to turn the system on and off, and then the insulated redstone conduit. We can run this just to the back of each of these machines. Here, there, there. And then we can change each of them to be redstone controlled on high. Active with signal. There we go. Now everything is no longer running. We just right click on our switch there and it turns everything on and gets our machine going again. This is a great way to not burn through as much redstone if you only need a little bit of cryotheum powder here, or dust. Now, how much RF does it take? I went and ran 1 million RF through this system and it came out with 108 Cryotheum Dust. So generally 1 million RF will give you 100 dust. Now how much redstone did that take? Well, quite a bit, probably about 1,000. As you can see, it still has a whole bunch buffered in the system here, so I don't have an exact count for you, but that is generally how to do it. I might have made one mistake or two back here, but I am not quite sure what that would be. Everything looks to be working. We have our Cryotheum Dust coming out the end. So pretty much any mistake is going to be in how this cache or this cache work. But the rest of it is solid, and you could probably get rid of the nullifier if you feel that might be burning up something that you don't want it to. But everything is working in this setup, and we are getting our niter coming through just fine, and our pulverizer's working. Everything's looping back just great. That is it for this episode of How It Works. I hope you have liked it. Do hit that like button and do subscribe so you can catch more of our episodes on How It Works. If you have any ideas on what you would like to see in these episodes, do leave a comment below, and we will see you in the next one.